Erin and Chad Paine take a big step. A $2 million dream home. After years of quiet perseverance, Erin Bates and Chad Paine were finally standing at the edge of a dream they had once whispered about when life was simpler. The couple, known for their deep faith and strong family values, had decided to take a step that many would call bold, buying a $2 million home. It wasn't about luxury or status for them. It was about building a haven, a space where love could grow freely and their children could feel safe, secure, and surrounded by peace. The decision had not come easily. They had walked through seasons of struggle, moments when finances were tight, when health challenges tested their strength, and when the weight of responsibility seemed almost too much to bear. But through it all, they held on to faith. They believed that one day, God would open a door, and when He did, they would walk through it together. The day they found the house, it felt different. It wasn't just the beautiful white exterior, or the wide porch that wrapped around like an embrace. It was the feeling of belonging. The walls seemed to hum with quiet promises, the kind that only hearts attuned to gratitude could hear. Erin stood in the empty living room, sunlight falling softly across her face, and for a moment she couldn't speak. Every step that led them here flashed before her. The nights she cried in silence, the days Chad worked long hours, the moments they prayed over bills and choices. All of it had led to this. Chad walked through the rooms with steady eyes, already imagining where their children would laugh, where family dinners would fill the air with warmth, where Christmas mornings would be filled with joy. To anyone else, it might have just been a house with a price tag. But to them, it was a testimony, a story of endurance, love, and grace. When they signed the papers, Erin's hands trembled slightly, not out of fear, but out of deep gratitude. They had faced storms that could have broken them. Yet here they were, standing in the sunlight of answered prayers. She glanced at Chad, and their eyes met. No words were needed. Everything they had endured, every tear, every doubt, every sleepless night, it all suddenly made sense. This wasn't just the purchase of a home. It was the closing of one chapter, and the beginning of another. A chapter filled with hope, promise, and the quiet realization that sometimes, miracles don't come with thunder. They come softly, like sunlight through an open window. The first few weeks in the new house felt like living inside a dream. Erin would wake up early, just to watch the morning light spill across the kitchen floor. The children's laughter filled the halls, and Chad often stood by the window, smiling as he watched them run barefoot through the yard. Everything seemed perfect, the kind of peace they had prayed for, the kind they thought would last forever. But sometimes, blessings arrive with silent challenges hidden within them. As the days passed, small cracks began to show, not in the walls, but in the weight of the responsibilities that came with such a big change. The house was beautiful, but it came with pressure. The kind that Erin could feel even when no one said a word. Bills began to pile up faster than they expected. Maintenance, property taxes, small repairs that seemed endless. Each one took more out of them than they had planned. Chad worked harder, often coming home late, his face tired but determined. Erin tried to keep the home filled with joy. But some nights, when the children were asleep, she would sit in the quiet and feel a deep ache of worry settle inside her. She prayed more often now, whispering words into the stillness. She didn't regret the house, not for a second, but she missed the simplicity they once had. Back when they didn't have much, but everything felt easier, lighter. Chad could sense her worry, but he didn't want her to see his own. They were both holding the same fear, each one trying to protect the other from it. Friends and family would visit and admire the beauty of their new home. They'd smile, compliment every corner, and Erin would smile too. But behind that smile was a heart quietly learning that even blessings can test one's strength. At night, when everything was still, she would stand by the window and look out into the darkness. The house was silent, the world was asleep, and she would whisper the same words she always had. God, please, help us keep this together. Because somewhere deep inside, she knew love and faith had brought them this far. But now those same things would be tested in ways they never imagined. As the months went by, the home that once felt like a blessing began to carry the weight of quiet tension. The laughter that used to fill the room still lingered, but something had changed. A silence had settled between Erin and Chad, the kind that didn't come from anger, but from exhaustion. Chad was working longer hours than ever, trying to keep up with the growing costs of the house. His hands, once steady and strong, now trembled slightly from fatigue. He missed dinners, missed bedtime stories, and some nights he would fall asleep still wearing his work clothes. Erin would look at him, her heart aching, wanting to say something but afraid her words would only add to his burden. She began to feel alone in the very home they had once dreamed of together. The bills came in faster than the paychecks, and little by little, their savings began to fade. Erin tried to stay strong for the children, hiding her tears behind gentle smiles. But inside, she felt torn between gratitude and fear, grateful for what they had, but scared they might lose it all. There were moments when she would walk through the empty hallways and feel the echo of her own doubts. She would remember the nights they spent praying for this house, how sure they had been that it was meant for them. But now she wondered if they had reached too far too fast. One evening, Chad came home late. The children were asleep, and Erin was sitting at the kitchen table with the bills spread out before her. The sight of her like that broke something inside him. He sat down, rubbing his forehead, his voice quiet and tired. "I thought this house would make everything better," he said softly. "But I feel like it's pulling us apart." Erin didn't answer right away. Tears filled her eyes as she looked at him. The man she loved. The man who had carried their family through every storm. She reached for his hand, her voice trembling. "We wanted a home," she whispered. "Not something that would take away our peace." For the first time in months, they sat together in silence, not as two people trying to hold everything together, but as two hearts finally admitting that they were breaking. That night, Erin prayed longer than she had in years. Not for money, not for comfort, but for guidance. Because deep down, she knew this was no longer about a house. It was about finding their way back to each other, before the dream they built started to fall apart. The breaking point came quietly, not with an argument but with a moment of truth. One morning, Erin sat by the window, watching the sun rise over their beautiful backyard. The house stood still, perfect in every way, yet it felt empty. She realized that somewhere along the way, they had become caretakers of walls and windows, instead of the love that once made their home truly alive. When Chad joined her, there were no words for a while. Just silence, the kind that spoke louder than anything else. Then Erin finally said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "We're losing ourselves trying to hold on to something we can't afford, not just with money, but with peace." Chad didn't argue. He had been carrying the same thought, the same weight for months. His eyes were tired, but there was relief in them too. For the first time, they were both being honest, not with each other but with themselves. They spent that day walking through every room, hand in hand, remembering the joy and the hope that had once filled these spaces. Erin touched the walls as though she was saying goodbye to a dream, not in regret, but in gratitude. The house had taught them something they could never have learned anywhere else. That love is not measured by square footage, and peace is not bought with money. A few weeks later, they made the hardest decision they'd ever had to make. They put the house up for sale. Friends and family were shocked, but Erin and Chad felt something they hadn't felt in a long time: peace. The day they moved out, the children were quiet. Erin took one last look at the empty rooms and smiled softly. "We came here searching for something," she said. "And even though we're leaving, I think we found it." Chad wrapped his arm around her. "We found home," he said gently. "It was never this house. It was us." As they drove away, the sunlight broke through the clouds, and Erin felt tears roll down her face, not of sadness, but of release. They had lost a house, but regained everything that truly mattered. Sometimes life leads you to your dream only to show you what really counts. For Erin and Chad, that lesson came wrapped in a beautiful home they would one day leave behind, and in the quiet strength of a love that never let go. Months passed after they left the house, but something inside Erin and Chad felt lighter, almost like their hearts could finally breathe again. The weight that had once followed them like a shadow was gone. What remained was stillness, simplicity, and a kind of peace that could only come after walking through fire and surviving it together. They moved into a smaller place, nothing grand, nothing polished, but full of warmth. The walls were closer, the rooms a little tighter, yet it felt more alive than any mansion ever could. The laughter of their children echoed again, this time softer, freer. The sound of Chad's guitar filled the evenings, and Erin's gentle singing once again brought calm to the air. Every now and then, Erin would remember the house, the tall windows, the long hallways, the dreams they once built within those walls. But she no longer felt sadness. She felt gratitude, because that house had shown her what faith really meant, trusting that God's plan might look different, but it is always right. One night, when the children had gone to bed, Erin and Chad sat on the porch together. The air was cool, the stars bright above them. Chad reached for her hand, holding it gently as he said, "I used to think success was about building something big enough for the world to see. But now I know, it's about building something strong enough to last, even when no one's watching." Erin smiled through quiet tears. "We lost a house," she whispered, "but we found our home." In that moment, everything they had endured, every sleepless night, every prayer, every tear, came together in perfect clarity. Love had never left them. It had simply led them here, where they could finally understand its depth. As the night grew still, Chad rested his head against hers, and Erin closed her eyes. The world was quiet, their hearts were steady, and somewhere in that silence, they both felt the same truth, that the greatest wealth they would ever have was right there in that small, humble home, surrounded by the people they loved. Because sometimes, God takes away what you thought you needed, just to give you what your heart was truly searching for. Broken Heart Sparkles.